The air in the courtroom was thick enough to choke on. It smelled of floor wax, stale coffee, and the distinct acrid scent of a life about to be ruined. Darius Whitaker sat at the defense table, his wrists chafing against the cold steel of standard-issue handcuffs. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too small, pulling tight across his broad shoulders. To the jury, he looked exactly like what the district attorney said he was: a menace, a danger to society, a nobody from the wrong side of the tracks who had gotten his hands on a stolen luxury car and a kilo of heroin. But Darius was none of those things. He kept his head down, eyes fixed on the grain of the wooden table. He wasn't praying, he was counting. "State your name and rank for the record," the district attorney boomed. He was a man who loved the sound of his own voice, a man who wore 3-piece suits to simple arraignments just to flex his budget. "Officer Vance Harlan, badge number 4092, Senior Patrol, 12th District." The voice from the witness stand was gravelly, confident, and dripping with arrogance. Darius looked up slowly. Vance Harlan was a massive man, built like a vending machine with a badge. His uniform was tight, his buzz cut severe. He sat in the witness box, not like a servant of the public, but like a king on a throne. He chewed gum, a violation of courtroom etiquette that Judge Victoria Hale seemed to be ignoring for the moment. "Officer Harlan," the prosecutor continued, pacing in front of the jury box, making sure every juror saw his expensive shoes, "walk us through the events of that night." Harlan leaned into the microphone. "It was a standard patrol. I was stationed near the intersection of 5th and Grand, a high-crime area. We get a lot of transients moving through there." "Transients," the prosecutor repeated, nodding as if this was a profound truth. "And what did you see?" "I saw a black Mercedes S-Class, late model, tinted windows. It was swerving, crossing the double yellow line. Erratic driving consistent with someone under the influence or fleeing a scene." Harlan's eyes flicked toward Darius. A smirk, barely perceptible, tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I initiated a traffic stop." Darius's public defender, a young, overworked woman named Sarah Jenkins, was scribbling furiously on her notepad. She looked terrified. She had told Darius earlier that Harlan was untouchable, a hero cop with the highest arrest record in the state. She had begged him to take a plea deal. 5 years, she had said. "If you fight this and lose, you'll get 20. Darius had refused. "And when the defendant pulled over," the prosecutor asked, "what happened?" "He was belligerent immediately," Harlan lied smoothly. "Refused to lower the window. When he finally did, I smelled marijuana, strong odor. I asked him to step out. He refused. I had to forcibly remove him for officer safety." Sarah Jenkins stood up, her voice shaking slightly. "Objection. The dashcam footage." "Sustained," Judge Hale said, though she sounded bored. "Stick to the facts, officer." "The facts are," Harlan said, his voice hardening, "that this man attacked me. He swung at me. I had to subdue him. And when I searched the vehicle, I found a duffel bag in the trunk, 1 kilo of pure heroin, and an unregistered Glock 19 with the serial number filed off." The jury gasped. A middle-aged woman in the front row clutched her pearls. Darius remained stone-faced. He remembered the arrest differently. There was no swerving. There was no marijuana. He had been pulled over because he was a black man in a $100,000 car in a neighborhood Harlan considered his personal kingdom. The attack had been Harlan dragging him out through the window and pistol whipping him before he could say a word. The heroin was planted. The gun was Harlan's drop piece. "So," the prosecutor said, stopping directly in front of Darius's table and leaning in so close that Darius could smell his cologne, "you found drugs, a weapon, and a violent suspect. Did the defendant say anything to you during the arrest?" Harlan laughed. It was a cold, ugly sound. "Yeah. He kept shouting about how I didn't know who he was. Said he was important. Said he knew people. Harlan looked directly at Darius. "Let me tell you something," he said, breaking protocol and speaking directly to the defendant instead of the jury. "I've been working these streets for years. I know a player when I see one. You think you can come into my town, drive a luxury car, and act like you matter? You're a nobody, just another street thug pretending to be a king, and now you're a caged animal. Exactly where you belong." "Objection!" Sarah shouted, standing up. "Badgering the defendant." "Withdrawn," the prosecutor said quickly, smiling. He had gotten what he wanted. He had painted the picture. Judge Hale adjusted her glasses, peering down at Darius. "Mr. Whitaker, your attorney tells me you have refused to testify. You have refused to provide employment history. You have refused to provide character witnesses. You sit there in silence while these serious accusations are levied against you. Do you have anything to say?" Darius's eyes locked onto Vance Harlan. The cop was smirking, already thinking about the celebration drinks he was going to have with the prosecutor later. They thought this was a slam dunk. They thought Darius Whitaker was just another statistic to pad their numbers. Darius slowly stood up. The chains rattled, echoing through the silent courtroom. Sarah tugged at his sleeve. "Darius, sit down. Don't say anything." Darius ignored her. He looked at the judge. "Your Honor?" His voice was calm, deep, and surprisingly articulate. It wasn't the voice of a street thug. It was the voice of a man used to giving orders. "I haven't refused to provide my employment history. I was legally restricted from doing so until now." Harlan rolled his eyes. "Here we go. I work for the CIA defense. We hear it every week, Your Honor." "Silence, officer," Judge Hale snapped. She looked at Darius with renewed interest. "Restricted? By whom?" Darius turned his body so he was facing the gallery, facing the camera that was recording for the court archives, and finally facing Harlan. "By the United States Department of Justice," Darius said. Laughter rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor chuckled audibly. "Your Honor, please. The defendant is clearly delusional. I ask that we move to closing arguments." "I have one piece of evidence to introduce," Darius said, reaching into the pocket of his orange jumpsuit. "Hold it!" The bailiff's hand went to his gun. "Hands where I can see them." "It's just a piece of paper," Darius said calmly, pulling out a folded, slightly crumpled letter. "And a request?" "A request?" the judge asked. "I request that Officer Harlan read this document aloud to the court. It's a transcript of a text message sent from his personal phone number at 10:42 on the night of my arrest." Harlan's face went pale. The smirk vanished instantly. He froze in the witness box. "Objection!" the prosecutor shouted. "This is ambush. We haven't seen this document." "It's impeachment evidence," Darius said coolly. "Admissible if it proves the witness is lying." "And Your Honor, he's lying." Judge Hale extended her hand. "Bailiff, bring me that note." The bailiff took the paper from Darius and handed it to the judge. The room was deadly silent. The ticking of the wall clock seemed to grow louder. Judge Hale read the note. Her eyebrows shot up. Her face flushed red. She looked from the paper to Harlan, then back to the paper. "Officer Harlan," the judge said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Is this your phone number?" Harlan swallowed hard. I don't recall, Your Honor." "Read it," the judge commanded, handing the paper back to the bailiff to give to Harlan. "Read it to the jury now." Harlan took the paper. His hands were shaking. He looked at the text. I can't read this." "Read it." Judge Hale slammed her gavel down so hard the wood splintered. Harlan licked his lips. He looked at the prosecutor for help, but the prosecutor was busy flipping through his files, suddenly very interested in avoiding eye contact. "It says," Harlan's voice cracked, "got another one. Black Mercedes S-Class. Nobody knows him. Going to plant the stash in the toy. Easy overtime. Dinner's on me, boys." The gas that went through the courtroom wasn't just shock. It was horror. "A nobody," Darius repeated from the defense table. "That's what you called me." Darius reached into his other pocket. This time he didn't move slowly. He moved with the precision of a viper. He slammed a leather wallet onto the defense table. It fell open. A gold shield gleamed under the courtroom lights. Below it, an ID card with the bold letters, Federal Bureau of Investigation. "My name is Special Agent Darius Whitaker," he announced, his voice booming like thunder. "I am the lead investigator for the FBI's Public Corruption Task Force. And Officer Harlan, you didn't arrest me. I arrested you." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum of shock. The gold badge on the table seemed to suck all the oxygen out of the room. Then chaos. Reporters in the back row jumped to their feet, rushing for the doors to call their editors. The jury members were whispering frantically to one another. The prosecutor dropped his pen. It clattered loudly on the floor, but he didn't bend to pick it up. He was staring at the badge, his face draining of color until he looked like a wax figure melting in the heat. "Order! Order in this court!" Judge Hale shouted, banging her gavel repeatedly. Vance Harlan sat frozen in the witness box. He looked like a man who had just stepped off a curb and seen a semi-truck inches from his face. This is fake," he stammered, his voice rising in panic. "He's lying. It's a fake badge. He's a con artist." Darius Whitaker didn't shout. He didn't scream. He simply reached down and unlocked his own handcuffs with a small key he had concealed in his palm. The click-click of the shackles falling onto the table was louder than the judge's gavel. "Bailiff," Judge Hale said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage, "verify that credential." The bailiff, a burly man who had worked with Harlan for years, walked over to the defense table. He picked up the leather wallet. He looked at the holographic seal. He looked at the ID card. He looked at Darius. The bailiff looked back at the judge. "It's real, Your Honor. It's federal. High clearance." Darius rubbed his wrists, looking at the red marks the cuffs had left. He walked out from behind the defense table. He wasn't the defendant anymore. He owned the room. "Officer Harlan," Darius said, pacing slowly toward the witness stand. "You called me a nobody. You said I was just another street thug. You didn't bother to run my plates properly, did you? If you had, you would have seen a level 5 security flag, but you were too busy calculating your overtime pay." I had probable cause," Harlan shouted, sweat beading on his forehead. "You were swerving." "There was no swerving," Darius said calmly, "and there was no heroin in my trunk until you put it there. We have it all, Vance. We have the audio. We have the video. My car wasn't just a car. It was a mobile surveillance unit." Darius turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, for the past several months, the FBI has been investigating a ring of corrupt officers in the 12th District. Officers who target minority drivers, plant evidence, and extort money to make charges go away. We called it Operation Blue Shark." He pointed a finger at Harlan. "And you, Vance, were the shark we were hunting." "This is entrapment!" the prosecutor suddenly shouted, finding his voice. He stood up, trying to regain control. "Your Honor, this is a farce. Even if he is an agent, he cannot entrap an officer into committing a crime. This case must be dismissed." "Dismissed?" Darius laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Mr. Reed, you might want to save your breath for your own attorney." The prosecutor froze. "Excuse me? Did you think we didn't look at the prosecution records?" Darius asked, turning his gaze on the district attorney. 90% of Officer Harlan's arrests result in convictions, an impossibly high number. And who prosecutes every single one of them? You do. You rubber stamp his lies. You bury the complaints. You take the wins to boost your campaign for higher office. "That is a baseless accusation," the prosecutor sputtered, but his hands were trembling. "Is it?" Darius reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small black flash drive. He held it up. "This drive contains hundreds of hours of wiretap recordings, including a phone call between you and Officer Harlan where you discussed how to bury me because I looked like I might have money to fight back." The silence returned, heavier than before. Judge Hale looked at the prosecutor. Her expression was one of pure disgust. "Mr. Reed," she said icily, "is this true?" I reserve my right to remain silent," the prosecutor whispered, invoking the Fifth Amendment in the very court where he had stripped so many others of their rights. "Smartest thing you've said all day," Darius remarked. Darius turned back to Harlan. The big cop was shrinking in his seat. The arrogance was gone. The bulldog was now a frightened puppy. "Vance Harlan," Darius said formally, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit honest services fraud, possession of narcotics, with intent to distribute, perjury, and civil rights violations under Title 18, Section 242. Harlan looked around the room, his eyes darting to the exits. "You can't do this here. I'm a cop. I have rights." "You had a badge," Darius corrected him. "You traded it for a few thousand and a power trip." Darius nodded to the back of the room. The heavy double doors of the courtroom swung open. 6 men in windbreakers with bold yellow letters, FBI, marched in. They were led by Assistant Director Harrison, a stern-faced man with gray hair. "Secure the room," Harrison ordered. 2 agents moved toward the prosecutor's table. 2 others moved toward the exits. Harrison walked straight to the witness stand. "Stand up, Harlan," Harrison barked. Harlan didn't move. He gripped the railing of the witness box. No, this is my house. You can't touch me in here." "It's not your house anymore," Darius said, stepping up to the stand. He leaned in close, his face inches from the corrupt officers. "Remember what you said to me in the holding cell. You said nobody is coming for you." Darius smiled, a cold, predatory smile. "You were wrong, Vance. Everybody is coming for you." Darius grabbed Harlan by the collar of his uniform and yanked him to his feet. Harlan tried to swing. A desperate, clumsy punch aimed at Darius's jaw. Darius blocked it effortlessly, swept Harlan's legs, and slammed him face first onto the floor of the witness box. The thud shook the room. "Stay down," Darius commanded, twisting Harlan's arm behind his back. "Get off me! Get off me!" Harlan screamed, sounding like a child throwing a tantrum. Darius pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt, his own FBI issue steel cuffs. He slapped them onto Harlan's wrists, tightening them just enough to be uncomfortable. "Vance Harlan," Darius recited, his voice ringing out for the cameras, "you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As Darius read the Miranda rights, the jury watched in awe. The nobody defendant was now the one holding the chains. But the story wasn't over. As the agents hauled a struggling Harlan out of the courtroom, Darius turned his attention to the gallery. He scanned the faces in the crowd until his eyes landed on a man in the back row, a man wearing a tailored gray suit, trying very hard to look invisible. It was Senator Patrick Graves, the man who had appointed the police chief, the man who had endorsed the district attorney. Darius tapped his earpiece. "Don't let the senator leave the building," he said softly. The senator's eyes went wide. He bolted for the door. "Part 2 is done," Darius whispered to himself. "Now, the real war begins." The heavy oak doors of the courtroom burst open, slamming against the marble walls of the hallway. Senator Patrick Graves, a man usually seen moving with the slow, deliberate grace of a predator, was sprinting. His Italian loafers slipped on the polished floor as he scrambled toward the elevator bank. He punched the down button frantically, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Come on, he hissed, checking over his shoulder. Behind him, the courtroom was a chaotic scene of shouting reporters and flashing cameras. But Graves wasn't worried about the press yet. He was worried about the man who had just dismantled his entire enforcement arm in less than 10 minutes. The elevator doors chimed and slid open. Graves lunged forward and slammed chest first into a wall of muscle. 2 FBI agents stood in the elevator car, arms crossed. They didn't blink. "Going down, Senator?" one of them asked dryly. Graves stumbled back, straightening his tie with trembling hands. This is a misunderstanding. I have a flight to catch. Washington is waiting. Washington can wait. A voice came from behind him. Graves spun around. Darius Whitaker was walking down the hallway. He had shed the ill-fitting orange jumpsuit jacket, revealing a black tactical t-shirt underneath that hugged his frame. His badge hung on a chain around his neck, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He looked nothing like the nobody defendant from 10 minutes ago. He looked like Judgment Day. "Agent Whitaker," Graves said, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Impressive show in there, truly. But let's be reasonable. I'm a United States Senator. You can't just detain me in a hallway like a common criminal." "You're right," Darius said, closing the distance. Darius stopped 2 feet from the senator. The height difference was intimidating. Darius towered over the politician. "I have to detain you like a high-value criminal, which means I don't read you your rights. I let the indictment do it for me." "Indictment?" Graves laughed nervously. "You have nothing on me. I don't patrol the streets. I don't plant drugs. I'm a public servant." "We know you don't plant the drugs, Patrick," Darius said, using the senator's first name with deliberate disrespect. "You just buy the land." Graves' face went slack. I don't know what you're talking about." "Operation Blue Shark wasn't just about dirty cops," Darius explained, his voice loud enough for the gathering crowd of reporters to hear. "It was about why the cops were dirty. We tracked the arrest records of Officer Harlan. 90% of his arrests happened in 3 specific blocks in the South Side, blocks that were designated blighted because of high crime rates." Darius pulled a folded map from his back pocket and snapped it open. "And who owns the shell corporation that just bought those 3 blocks for pennies on the dollar? Graves Development Group. You were using Harlan to terrorize the neighborhood, drive down property values, and arrest the young men who lived there so you could bulldoze their homes and build luxury condos." The reporters gasped. Camera shutters clicked like machine gun fire. "That is a lie," Graves screamed, his composure shattering. "That is a lie." "It's a RICO case," Darius countered calmly. "Racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations. We traced the wire transfers, Patrick. Harlan's overtime came directly from your offshore account in the Caymans. We have the bank records. We have the emails. We even have the text message you sent to the district attorney where you discussed how to bury me because I looked like I might have money to fight back." Graves looked around for an escape route, but he was surrounded. To his left, the FBI agents. To his right, the voracious press. In front of him, the man he had tried to bury. "You can't do this," Graves whispered, tears of rage forming in his eyes. "I know the governor. I know the president." "Good," Darius said, pulling out his handcuffs. "You can tell them all about it on visiting day." Darius spun the senator around. Graves resisted, thrashing his arms. "Get your hands off me. Do you know who I am?" "Yeah," Darius said, clicking the cuffs onto the senator's wrists tight enough to pinch. "You're prisoner number 4592. As the agents led the weeping senator away, a young reporter with a microphone shoved her way to the front. "Agent Whitaker? Agent Whitaker, how long have you been undercover?" Darius stopped. He looked directly into the camera lens. "Long enough to know that justice is blind," Darius said, his voice hard. "But I'm not. If you abuse your power in this city, if you prey on the people you swore to protect, look over your shoulder because I'm already there." He turned and walked away, not toward the exit, but back toward the holding cells. He wasn't done. He had the money man, and he had the muscle, but there was still a rat to catch. The interrogation room at the FBI field office was soundproof, cold, and smelled of antiseptic. It was designed to make people feel small. Vance Harlan sat at the metal table, his hands cuffed to the steel ring bolted to the floor. He had been stripped of his uniform. He was wearing gray federal sweats now, without the badge, without the gun, and without the uniform. The bulldog looked deflated. He looked like what he was, a middle-aged bully who had finally met someone he couldn't hit. The door buzzed and opened. Darius walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He placed one on the table just out of Harlan's reach and took a sip from the other. He didn't sit down. He just leaned against the wall, watching Harlan. "I want a lawyer," Harlan grunted. "You have a lawyer," Darius said. "He's in the lobby. Public defender. Ironically, it's the same guy you used to make fun of in court last year. He doesn't seem very eager to cut you a deal." Harlan sneered. "I'm not talking. The district attorney will fix this. The senator will fix this. You think you won because you have a badge? This is Chicago. Politics runs everything. By tomorrow morning, I'll be out on bail and you'll be transferred to Alaska." Darius chuckled softly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a remote control. He pointed it at the small TV mounted in the corner of the room. "You've been in processing for some time, Vance. You missed the news." The screen flickered to life. It was a live breaking news feed. The headline in bold red letters read, "Senator Graves arrested in housing scandal." The footage showed Graves being shoved into the back of an FBI van, weeping openly. Harlan's eyes went wide. "No, it gets better," Darius said, changing the channel. The next screen showed District Attorney Harlan Reed standing at a podium surrounded by microphones. He looked pale, sweaty, and terrified. "I was unaware of Officer Harlan's illegal activities," Reed was saying on the screen, his voice shaking. "I am fully cooperating with the FBI investigation. I have agreed to provide full testimony regarding the criminal conduct of Vance Harlan in exchange for immunity regarding my administrative oversights." Darius turned the TV off. The room went silent again. "Did you hear that, Vance?" Darius asked softly. "Your best friend, the district attorney, the guy you bought dinner for every week. He just rolled on you. He's giving us everything. The planted evidence, the false reports, the skimmed drug money. He's painting you as the mastermind to save his own skin." Harlan was trembling now. The reality was crashing down on him. The blue wall of silence had crumbled. He was alone. They can't do that," Harlan whispered. "I know," Darius said, finally sitting down in the chair opposite Harlan. "But they're suits. Politicians. When the ship sinks, they throw the cargo overboard to stay afloat. You're the cargo." Darius leaned forward. "You're looking at decades in federal prison, Vance. And let me tell you, federal prison isn't like the county jail you run. The guys in there, they don't care about your badge. In fact, a lot of them are there because of guys like you. You won't last a week in general population." Harlan started to cry. Ugly, heaving sobs. "I have a family. I have 2 daughters." "Did you think about my family when you planted that heroin?" Darius asked, his voice suddenly dropping to a growl. "Did you think about the family of the kid you framed last year who took his own life in his cell?" Harlan flinched as if he'd been slapped. "I can't save you from prison, Vance," Darius said, leaning back. "You earned that, but I can control where you go. I can put you in a protective custody wing, low security. You might actually survive to see your daughters graduate. What do you want?" Harlan wiped his nose on his sleeve. "I want the stash houses," Darius said. "Graves was the money. The district attorney was the cover, but you ran the streets. We know you didn't turn in all the drugs you seized. We know you're sitting on a stockpile." Harlan hesitated. "If you don't tell me," Darius said, standing up and grabbing the door handle, "I walk out of here and I tell the press that you were the one who snitched on the senator. Imagine what Graves's connections will do to you inside when they think you were the rat." "Wait!" Harlan screamed, straining against his cuffs. "Wait! Don't leave!" Darius stopped, his hand on the knob. He didn't turn around. "The old auto body shop," Harlan blurted out. "It's in the basement under the lift. Guns, cash, and kilos of product. And the ledger." Darius turned around slowly. "The ledger?" "The payroll," Harlan gasped. "The list of every cop on the senator's payroll. There's more than just me. There's captains, there's judges." Darius smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had just found the entire pack. Good boy, Vance, Darius said. He opened the door. 2 agents were waiting outside. Get a warrant for the auto body shop. And bring in the tactical team. We're going to need a bigger van. As Darius walked down the corridor, his phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. He opened it. You think you won? But you just cut off the head of a hydra. Watch your back, agent. The 12th District doesn't forgive. Darius stopped walking. He stared at the screen. He had taken down the senator, the district attorney, and the star cop. But Harlan was right about one thing. Corruption didn't die easily. He typed a reply, "Come and get me." He hit send and shoved the phone into his pocket. The battle was over, but the war was just getting hot. And Darius Whitaker was just getting started. The raid on the auto body shop happened in the dead of night. It was executed with the kind of surgical precision that Vance Harlan and his goons could only dream of. The rain was coming down in sheets, turning the Chicago streets into slick black rivers of oil and grime. Darius sat in the command van, watching the thermal feeds from the drone hovering silently above the rusted corrugated roof of the shop. "Alpha team in position," a voice crackled over the radio. "Breaching in 3, 2, 1. On the screen, white-hot silhouettes swarmed the building. Flashbangs detonated. Bright flares of light washed out the thermal camera for a split second. Then the muffled thump-thump-thump of suppressed carbine fire. Darius didn't flinch. He just watched. Clear left, clear right. 1 suspect down, 2 secured. Jackpot. The team leader's voice came back, breathless. "We found the lift. It's hollow underneath. We're looking at enough heroin to sedate an elephant. And guns. Crates of them. Military grade." "The ledger?" Darius asked, pressing the talk button. "Do you have the book?" There was a pause. The silence stretched for seconds that felt like hours. "Yeah, boss. We got it. It was in a fireproof safe, welded to the floor. We had to blow the hinges. It's thick, Bennett. Real thick." Darius let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Bag it. Tag it. Bring it to me personally. Nobody else touches it. Not even the local PD support." "Copy that." Darius stepped out of the van into the pouring rain. The flashing blue and red lights of the perimeter cars danced across the wet pavement. He felt a moment of satisfaction. They had the drugs, the guns, and the names. It was over. Or so he thought. As the tactical team began hauling out crates of evidence, Darius walked toward his personal vehicle. A nondescript black SUV parked just outside the caution tape. He was exhausted. The adrenaline from the courtroom showdown was fading, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. He needed coffee, and he needed to start decoding that ledger. He unlocked his car and slid into the driver's seat. He turned the key. The engine didn't start. Instead, the dashboard lights flickered and died. Darius frowned. Battery? No. This was a government-issue vehicle maintained weekly. Then he heard it. A small, rhythmic beep-beep coming from beneath the chassis. His blood ran cold. Instinct took over. The kind of instinct honed by years of undercover work, where a split second meant the difference between life and a closed casket. Darius threw the door open and dove out onto the wet asphalt, scrambling on his hands and knees away from the vehicle. The explosion lifted the SUV 5 feet into the air. A fireball erupted, turning the rainy night into a blinding orange inferno. The shockwave hit Darius like a physical hammer, slamming him face first into the pavement. Glass and twisted metal rained down around him like deadly confetti. His ears were ringing. A high-pitched whine drowned out the shouting of the agents behind him. He rolled onto his back, gasping for air, staring up at the burning skeleton of his car. "Agent Whitaker! Agent Whitaker!" Hands grabbed his vest, dragging him further back. It was Agent Ross, a young field operative. "Sir, are you hit?" Darius shook his head, coughing as the acrid smoke filled his lungs. I'm good. Secure the scene. It's a hit." "A hit?" Ross yelled over the roar of the fire. Who? The text message, Darius rasped, struggling to his feet, swaying slightly. They said the 12th District doesn't forgive. They weren't kidding. He looked at the burning wreckage. This wasn't just a warning. This was an assassination attempt. Whoever was on that ledger wasn't just some corrupt cop skimming drug money. They were organized. They were militarized. And they were terrified of what Darius was about to read. Ross, Darius barked, his voice returning with a dangerous edge. Where is the ledger? Team leader has it in the armored truck. Sir, get in the truck, Darius ordered. We're not going to the field office. They'll expect us there. We're going to the safe house in Cicero. Protocol Black. No radios, no cell phones. We go dark. Sir, shouldn't we call the director? We don't know who the director talks to, Darius said grimly, wiping soot from his face. Until I read that book, I trust no one. The ride to Cicero was tense. Darius sat in the back of the armored transport, the black leather notebook resting on his knees. It looked innocuous, just a simple accounting book you could buy at any office supply store. But inside, written in neat, precise handwriting, were the sins of an entire city. He opened the first page. It wasn't just names. It was dates, amounts, favors. Officer Harlan, 5,000, protection for shipment. District Attorney Reed, 15,000, dismissal of case. He flipped forward. The amounts got larger. The names got more recognizable. Judge Hale, 50,000, search warrant denial. Darius froze. Judge Hale, the Chief Justice of the Circuit Court, the man who signed off on the wiretaps for the very investigation Darius was running. He flipped further. Councilman Graves, 100,000. Rezoning approval. Graves, the man of the people, the politician who ran on a platform of cleaning up the streets. Darius felt sick. The corruption didn't just climb the ladder. It was the ladder. But it was the last entry on the last page that made Darius's heart stop. It was dated recently. Payment pending. The cleaner. Target. Agent J. Bennett. Price. 250,000. They put a $250,000 bounty on my head, Darius whispered. Sir? Miller asked from the driver's seat. Drive faster, Darius said, closing the book. We aren't safe anywhere. As they sped down the highway, Darius's mind raced. The cleaner. It was a myth in the underworld. A contract killer who never missed, who made deaths look like accidents or suicides. The car bomb was sloppy, which meant the cleaner hadn't arrived yet. The bomb was a local job, a panic move by the cops who knew the walls were closing in. But if the cleaner was coming, suddenly, the armored truck swerved violently. Contact! Miller shouted. Black SUVs, no plates, they're ramming us. Darius grabbed the handle above the door. Through the bulletproof rear window, he saw 3 large SUVs flanking them. A man leaned out of the passenger window of the lead car holding a submachine gun. Bullets sparked against the armored plating of the truck. Ping, ping, ping. They're trying to run us off the road, Miller yelled, wrestling with the steering wheel. Don't let them box you in, Darius shouted. He grabbed his service rifle from the rack. Ross, open the rear port. Sir, are you crazy? Open it. Ross unlatched the small firing port in the back doors. Darius shoved the barrel of his rifle through. He took a breath, timing the sway of the truck. He squeezed the trigger. Pop, pop, pop. The windshield of the pursuing SUV shattered. The driver swerved, overcorrecting. The SUV spun out of control, clipping the front bumper of the second attacker. The first SUV flipped, rolling violently into the ditch in a shower of sparks. One down, Ross cheered. But the remaining 2 were aggressive. One pulled alongside the armored truck, grinding against the side. The metal screeched, a horrible ear-splitting sound. Darius saw the driver of the sidecar. He was wearing a tactical mask. He raised a shotgun, aiming not at the tires, but at the driver's window of the truck. Miller, brake check, Darius screamed. Miller didn't hesitate. He slammed on the brakes. The attacking SUV shot past them. As it did, Darius shifted his aim and fired into the rear tires of the passing vehicle. The tire blew. The SUV fishtailed, slamming into the concrete median barrier with a bone-crunching impact. The third SUV, seeing its comrades destroyed, peeled off, taking the nearest exit and disappearing into the night. Miller got the truck back under control, his hand shaking on the wheel. Jesus, that was close. Darius didn't celebrate. He stared at the retreating taillights of the third car. They know we have the book, Darius said quietly. They aren't trying to kill me anymore, Miller. They're trying to destroy the evidence. He looked down at the ledger in his lap. We need to get this to the only person in the city who isn't on this list, Darius said. Who is that? Ross asked. The Attorney General, Darius replied, but she's in D.C. giving a speech. We have to survive until she lands tomorrow morning. And until then, Darius loaded a fresh magazine into his rifle. Until then, we hunt. The safe house was a converted warehouse in the industrial district of Cicero. It had reinforced steel doors, no windows on the ground floor, and its own encrypted server. It was supposed to be a fortress. Darius paced the concrete floor, the ledger open on a metal table under a single halogen lamp. He had cross-referenced the names. He had built a conspiracy board on the wall connecting threads of red yarn between photos of judges, cops, and politicians. The picture it painted was terrifying. The 12th District wasn't just a police precinct, it was a criminal enterprise masquerading as law enforcement. And the man at the center of the web, the man designated as Kingpin in Darius's notes, it wasn't Senator Graves. Graves was just a middleman. The money trail led to a shell company owned by Deputy Mayor Richard Graves. Graves was the golden boy of city politics, untouchable, loved by the media, and apparently the man who had ordered the hit on Darius. We have a problem, Agent Rothstadt said, coming into the room holding a tablet. I've been monitoring the police bands. There's a code 1033 at County Jail. Darius looked up sharply. Code 1033. That's an officer in distress or a riot. It's the protective custody wing, Ross said, his face pale. Where we put Vance Harlan, Darius cursed. They're cleaning up loose ends. Harlan knows where the rest of the bodies are buried. If he dies, half these names on the list walk free because we lose the corroborating witness. It gets worse, Ross continued. The responding unit isn't SWAT. It's the 12th District Tactical Team, the same guys who worked for Harlan. They aren't going in to save him, Darius. They're going in to finish the job. Darius grabbed the ledger and shoved it into his tactical bag. We're leaving. To the jail? Miller asked, standing up from his cot. Sir, that's suicide. If the 12th is there, it's going to be a war zone. Harlan is a scumbag, Darius said, checking his pistol. He framed me. He beat me. He called me a nobody. But right now, he's the most valuable asset the United States government has. And I'll be damned if I let a bunch of dirty cops kill my witness. Darius looked at his two men. You don't have to come. This isn't sanctioned. Miller racked the slide of his shotgun. You drove a Mercedes into a trap to catch a racist cop. I think we're way past sanctioned, boss. Let's go get the bastard. The scene at Cook County Jail was chaos. Smoke billowed from the east wing. Alarms blared into the night air. Police cruisers from the 12th District formed a perimeter, but they weren't securing the area. They were blocking anyone else from getting in. Darius pulled the armored truck up to the rear gate, the one used for kitchen deliveries. It was guarded by two officers in riot gear. Roll down the window, Darius told Miller. The guard stepped forward, raising his hand. Turn around. Facility is in lockdown. No access. Darius leaned across Miller. FBI. We have a prisoner transfer order for inmate Harlan. The guard hesitated. He tapped his earpiece. Command. I've got feds at the back gate, asking for Harlan. Darius didn't wait for the reply. He knew what the order would be. Miller, go. Miller stomped on the gas. The heavy armored truck surged forward. The guard dove out of the way as the truck smashed through the chain-link gate, the metal screaming as it tore apart. "We're in," Darius shouted. "Get to the protective custody block." They drove through the prison yard, dodging debris. Inmates were running loose in the lower yard, but the real action was in the tower. The truck screeched to a halt outside the entrance to Block C. Darius kicked the door open and sprinted inside. Miller and Ross flanked him. The corridors were filled with smoke. The sprinkler system was raining down water. Bodies of inmates and guards lay on the floor, the result of the staged riot. They reached the heavy steel door of the protective custody unit. It was being cut open with a torch from the inside. "They're already in!" Darius yelled. He raised his rifle. "Federal agents, drop it!" 3 men in black tactical gear, no badges, no insignia, spun around from the door. They were wearing gas masks. They raised their weapons. Darius didn't hesitate. He fired. The hallway erupted in a deafening exchange of gunfire. Bullets sparked off the concrete walls. One of the hitmen went down. Miller took a hit to his vest and stumbled back, grunting in pain but keeping his shotgun up. "Flashbang!" Ross yelled, tossing a canister down the hall. Bang! The blinding light stunned the remaining 2 attackers. Darius surged forward through the smoke, moving like a ghost. He tackled the second gunman, slamming him against the wall and stripping his weapon. He delivered a swift strike to the man's throat, dropping him. The third gunman turned to run, but Ross dropped him with a precise shot to the leg. Darius reached the cell door. Through the small, reinforced window, he saw Vance Harlan. The big ex-cop was huddled in the corner of his cell, clutching a shiv made from a toothbrush. He was weeping, his eyes wide with terror. He looked up and saw Darius's face in the window. For a moment, Harlan looked confused. Then he looked relieved. "Open it!" Darius shouted to Miller, who was rigging a small explosive charge to the lock. "Fire in the hole!" The lock blew. The door swung open. Darius stepped in. The water from the sprinklers dripped off his nose. He looked down at the man who had tried to ruin his life just days ago. "Get up, Vance," Darius said. Harlan scrambled to his feet. You came back. They sent a hit squad. My own guys." "I told you," Darius said, grabbing Harlan by the arm and hauling him toward the door. "Nobody touches my witness." "Bennett," Ross shouted from the hallway. "We have movement. A lot of it. The 12th District SWAT team is coming up the stairs. They aren't going to let us walk out of here." Darius looked at the hallway. Then he looked at Harlan. Then he looked at the ledger in his bag. They were trapped. 3 agents and a snitch against an army of corrupt cops who had nothing left to lose. Darius tapped his earpiece. "This is Agent Whitaker transmitting on the emergency frequency. I am at Cook County Jail, Block C. I have a high-value witness. I am under fire from hostile forces. I repeat, police officers are firing on federal agents. Any available units assist immediately. Static." Then a voice cut through the noise. It wasn't the state police. It wasn't the attorney general. "Agent Whitaker." A deep voice rumbled. "This is Captain Jackson, Illinois National Guard. We just got a call from D.C. Hold your position, son. The cavalry is coming." Darius smiled. A genuine smile this time. "Copy that, Captain," Darius said, raising his rifle toward the stairwell door as it began to bulge from a battering ram. "But you better hurry. We're about to have a party." The door to the stairwell burst open. Smoke grenades rolled in. "Let's dance," Darius whispered. The steel door to the cell block gave way with a deafening screech. Through the smoke, the tactical shields of the 12th District SWAT team advanced like a phalanx of Roman soldiers. They weren't shouting commands to surrender. They were moving in silence, intent on erasure. "Suppressing fire!" Darius roared. He and Ross unleashed a volley of rounds into the fatal funnel of the doorway. Sparks flew as bullets deflected off the heavy ballistic shields. It slowed the advance, but only for a second. "We're out of ammo in 30 seconds!" Ross yelled, swapping his last magazine. Miller was slumped against the wall, his face pale from blood loss, clutching his shotgun with one hand. Harlan was curled in a ball on the floor, sobbing. This is it, Darius thought. He checked his sidearm, 7 rounds, enough to take a few with him. The lead shield-bearer stepped into the room, raising a submachine gun. Darius leveled his pistol at the visor. Suddenly, the entire building shook. A low, rhythmic thump-thump-thump vibrated through the concrete floor, growing louder until it drowned out the gunfire. Glass shattered from the upper skylights as ropes dropped from the ceiling. Freeze! United States National Guard! The voice wasn't human. It was amplified by a massive loudspeaker from a hovering Black Hawk helicopter. Simultaneously, the rear wall of the corridor, the one behind the corrupt SWAT team, exploded inward. A tactical vehicle had breached the perimeter. Dozens of soldiers in full camouflage poured into the hallway, rifles raised. The corrupt cops froze. They were used to bullying civilians and outnumbering street gangs. But staring down the barrel of the U.S. military was a different math entirely. "Drop your weapons! On your faces now!" Captain Jackson bellowed, stepping over the debris. One by one, the SWAT members of the 12th District dropped their guns. The clatter of metal on concrete sounded like music to Darius's ears. Darius lowered his weapon, letting out a long, ragged breath. He looked down at Harlan. "Get up, Vance," Darius said. "You're safe. Unfortunately for you." 2 weeks later, the arrest of Deputy Mayor Richard Graves was televised live. Darius personally slapped the cuffs on him in the middle of a City Hall press conference. Graves tried to run, tried to scream about his rights, but the cameras caught every second of his cowardice. The golden boy of Chicago was dragged out in disgrace. The ledger found in the auto body shop served as the nail in his coffin. But the real satisfaction came in the courtroom of the 4th Circuit. The gallery was packed. Darius sat in the front row wearing a crisp suit, his FBI badge clipped to his belt. Vance Harlan stood before the judge. He had taken a plea deal. 20 years in federal prison in exchange for testifying against Graves and the corrupt judges. "Mr. Harlan," the new judge said, a stern man brought in from a different district. "Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Harlan looked back. He locked eyes with Darius. The arrogance was gone. The bulk was gone. He looked small. I just wanted to be somebody." Harlan's voice cracked. The judge banged the gavel. "You are sentenced to 20 years in the USP Marion High Security Facility, remanded immediately." As the bailiffs led Harlan away, he passed by Darius. Darius didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He just leaned forward and whispered one sentence. "You were right, Vance. In prison, you really are a nobody." Harlan hung his head and was dragged through the door, vanishing into the darkness of the system he had abused for so long. Darius walked out of the courthouse and into the sunlight. The air smelled fresh. He checked his phone. A text from his director. "Good work, Agent. Take a week off." Darius deleted the message. He didn't need a week off. There were other cities, other corrupt cops, other nobodies waiting for justice. He walked to his new car, unlocked the door, and drove away. The lion was back on the hunt, and that is the story of how one corrupt officer underestimated the wrong man. Vance Harlan thought his badge gave him the right to be a king, but he forgot that a badge doesn't make you a hero. Integrity does. He called Darius a nobody. But in the end, Darius was the one who took down the entire empire. It's a powerful reminder that no matter how much power someone thinks they have, the truth always has a way of coming out. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want to see more stories where the underdog strikes back and karma hits hard, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.